I recall a couple of years ago when there was a proposal by the Bloomberg administration to cut nursing staffs in the non-public schools. And I remember testifying at that time before the council, and I remember being impressed by somebody who fought like a lion to ensure that the nurses would be restored to the public schools, and that's none other than Chris Quinn. And I use that as an intro to my question, which is, you know that for most of the people around the table over here, the choice of educational setting for their children is the private school, the yeshiva, and there are today in New York
thought this
City.
was a Catholic school crowd. I went to Catholic school. I thought we were going to discuss the nuns.
Okay, all
I'll
right.
reshift. No, I'm like kidding.
And there are today about close to 90,000 children in K through 12 institutions in the Jewish schools across this great city. Over 250,000 children enrolled in non-public schools in New York City, which which is more than 20% of the total school population of the city. So I'd be interested in hearing, and again, having seen you in action on the school nurses issue, I think I have some sense of where your sentiments may rest over here. But can you speak to us a little bit about your vision of where the religious schools, the yeshivas, and more generally the religious schools and their student populations and the parents who send them to these schools fit into the larger educational picture of New York, how the city can help them within constitutional bounds, these sorts of issues?
Well, look, I think that some of the final words you used there within the constitutional bounds is the framework for me moving forward. And we had a meeting not long ago at the Orthodox Union where I said I thought the first thing we really needed to do, because I don't know the answer to this question, but I'm sure there are people who do, what is allowed under the Blaine Amendment, what isn't allowed? And then let's look at that whole list of things that's allowed, which I think is probably longer than we think it is, and begin to plan out in a prioritized sense how we get more resources out there to the religious schools in the city. Because we want to make sure children get what they need to be educated, and that they get the resources that they should be getting. And I think there are areas where we can be doing more. I know security is an issue we have to explore, transportation, we need to sit down and have those conversations, understanding kind of, look, there's some stuff that is a no-no under that amendment. Now, some may want to change that. Probably we're not going to have a ton of agreement there, but what's on the list, let's move forward and make sure we're getting those resources out there.
Well, when you appoint your panel of experts who will advise you in that area, why don't you reach out to some of us?
Absolutely.
And include us in that conversation?
Oh, without a doubt, sure.
That's very
Yeah,
important.
absolutely.
Steve Berg from the Simon Wiesenthal Center. We were actually together at the beautiful Tu B'Shvat Seder at his
Yes,
house. So
which was great.
we needed a little more of that fruit. Next
Totally
time
right.
We'll come together. I just want to ask you very briefly. I know you've done a lot of work on Stop and Frisk. I know that's been a huge issue here. The Simon Wiesenthal Center, we actually do a lot of law enforcement training in the state of California. All law enforcement officers in the whole state come through. We do all kinds of different training. And one of the things that we've taken a look here at NYPD is a lot of the training is all internal. And they don't
You mean done by police officers?
Done by the NYPD. You know, our thoughts are, we've had recently Chief Banks, we had Chief Harrington, we've had Chief Clone, we've had them come by the center to take a look at our training. And one of the thoughts are that if the NYPD would be more open to going outside the NYPD for all sorts of things, but particularly the training, that might be something that might help on this issue. Just wondering where your
I think
feelings are.
that's a great idea. I mean, your experience, DeVore has done so much training of law enforcement. I know when I was at the Anti-Violence Project, we used to do training, roll call training. I think it makes a big difference because it's just, it's not to say better or worse, it's just a different perspective, a different look at it, a different emphasis. And I think it also sends a message to officers that that the public's perspective and opinions matters as well. So absolutely. I very much think there's tremendous benefit in that.
Thank you.
We should continue to enjoy the security and the safety, especially now with the instability in Syria and all over the world. People are concerned with the next administration. How can you assure us that we're going to continue to have that open door policy with your commissioner of the NYPD? And like it was brought up, we should be involved in either some sort of a sensitivity training so to make them better aware of the Jewish customs and in reality that really helps the community when it comes to time of crisis to avoid a big chaotic and
Right. Look, I think you want to get a lot of different communities involved in that kind of training, so the police department can really hear directly from the diverse communities that they are charged with serving. There's no question in my mind about that. And as it relates to open door policy, you'll have one. I also believe it's useful for the mayor's office, the police department, whatever agency we're talking about at any given meeting, that we have advisory boards set up that can be having quarterly meetings with the commissioner on issues so that there is that open door. And look, sometimes you won't need the meetings, everything will be fine, and that's terrific. And other times you'll need 2 meetings in 1 quarter, but that's the point of having that structure in place, so there's always that ability to have conversation and dialogue.
You still continue to say that Commissioner Kelly will stay on your administration?
You know, I have said and stand by it that I think whoever the next mayor is would be lucky to have Ray Kelly as police commissioner. Now, do I think he's been a good police commissioner? Yes. Is that why Chuck Schumer is suggesting him as Homeland Security? Of course. But do I agree with every way he's done policing? No. But I also don't think you throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I've made very clear that my commitment as mayor is to not have police officers make stops in a stop and frisk context that are unconstitutional. We cannot have unconstitutional stops, and that will be my charge to the commissioner, Ray Kelly, or whoever else it is.
I'm really here to talk about something from a different perspective than what was previously discussed. We represent about 4,300 families of children that have lifelong or life-threatening illnesses. And primarily on those that have lifelong illnesses and lifelong disabilities that are mentally cognizant. You wouldn't fall into the subdivisions of the various different programs that are going on. We find that there's an incredible lack of opportunity for them post 18 years old, where they have a very, very difficult time to integrate within society and thereby functioning to their utmost of potential. What is your view in terms of city government to be able to address at least what we consider about 1,200 families that live within the city environment?
Simca Felder's son interned with you, is that right? Am I remembering the right group?
He was in Kempston.
Yeah. You know, this area of children, you know, will have some kind of special needs or challenges after they're 18. It's an area we've not done particularly well in the city. We kind of act as once you turn 18, or in some cases 21, as if the challenges and the problems disappear, which we know isn't true. So this is an area we're going to want to get experts like you, experts in other areas of this field together, and really start coming up with plans for that kind of care and training, that care and assistance that people need once they're older than 18, which is really important, but it's an area where we have not done well at all.
There's a tremendous need for it. There's no question that this need's been going on for years, but I've never seen an active committee within the city government that has really done the appropriate outreach and studies to what is critically needed and what is critically available to help.
No, I think you're absolutely right. That has been a deficit, and we need to fix it. There's no question about it.
Robert Batas, thank you. With the Board of Rabbis, but my full-time job is Ezra Friedlander, rabbi. Just watching him every day is consuming.
Exhausting.
Yeah, and thank you for the lavish reception. Moses couldn't satisfy all the Jews. Yeah. I just want to say, we talked about openness before with the administration, and I think some of you know that Christine Quinn has always had an office open for everyone. As a matter of fact, one of the things that impressed me very much was when you had a series of sessions on tax liens on houses of worship, and the cameras weren't there. You know, show me what someone does when the cameras are not around, with all due respect to the cameras. And I think that was a very telling moment, that here were houses of worship that were facing some real consequences, and you took it on as a major responsibility. But what I want to ask you, talk about housing, because your resume is replete with being an advocate for housing. We live in communities, we want to attract young people, and we hear the same, litany that we can't afford. We'd love to live here, we just can't afford it. Any thoughts in terms of?
It's one of the biggest problems we have in the city, and one of the most worrisome things I hear, and we have to respond to it really aggressively. I mean, and how would I respond to it? One, I'd move forward with the Mayor Bloom's plan still to build more low-income housing, but I would also move forward with a plan to build 40,000 new moderate and middle-income units. That would be with city money, I've identified that money in the capital budget. The good thing about it being city money is we can decide what the income categories are. Because it's our money, we're not bound by the federal money. So what might be middle income in one neighborhood is different than what's middle income in another neighborhood. That gives us a real chance to be responsive to people's needs. We also need to make sure, look, one of the things that has lost us more apartments as affordable than anything else was the erosion of rent protections. And it's not gonna be easy, and it may not happen in the first year of my term, but we need to go to Albany and get New York City to have power over its own rent laws. 300,000 apartments have been lost because of the erosion and rent stabilization. That is one of the reasons people can't find apartments in good neighborhoods that they can afford. 3, we need to fix up the dilapidated housing that's out there. There's about 100,000 units that are in terrible physical and economic distress. We can fix those up. I would have the city purchase the notes on those buildings in bulk, because they're all in default now and the bank owns them. And then let's give them in a loan way to not-for-profit and reputable housing developers to fix them up. We did this in the Bronx, we saved 500 apartments. These are some of the steps we're gonna need to take to really get more affordable housing out there on the market, or we're gonna really risk not being a middle-class city any longer. Yes, ma'am.
First of all, I'm from Queens, Kew Garden Hills, and I want you to know that you have a lot of supporters.
Thank you,
And
thank
it seems like this is very much a Brooklyn crowd, because I don't recognize anybody.
Don't judge a book by its cover.
I'm a real estate developer, focused in Brooklyn, and been working with my partners.
So Brooklyn is okay for sale?
Yeah, right. Not for living, but for
You talk
working.
from my accent, that's where I grew up. So just on the subject of housing, I think one of the untold stories I was driving down Atlantic Avenue yesterday and I saw the first Brooklyn tour bus.
Oh, gosh.
One of those Apple buses that
Double-deckers,
says
yeah.
See Brooklyn. There's a lot of sort of bad press about the gentrification of these neighborhoods, but I think the untold story is the young entrepreneurs through 2008, 9, and 10, when there was no bank debt, who scraped together real risk capital and bought those buildings and 2 20-family buildings on Myrtle Avenue,
Right.
and started to grow the housing stock. And their lives have been dramatically affected by changes to the J51 program and others. And there is a way to collaborate between the needs of, lower, and I think even more important, as you point out, middle-income
Right.
housing, and this aggressive move in Brooklyn of real risk capital. Many of these people are not members of the Real Estate Board in New York. My partners are some, I see them,
Right.
who haven't been politically active, but there's a lot of entrepreneurs willing to risk money and very interested in getting engaged on this dialogue about how to make the city hospitable to all kinds of residents.
That's terrific. And let me just, we talked a little bit about housing, which you mentioned, but let me just seize on another word you mentioned, entrepreneur. And we have a real environment right now in New York that is conducive to high-tech entrepreneurs coming here from all across the world wanting to invest. What we need to do is seize that opportunity to fill the job vacancies those high-tech folks have with New Yorkers. Look, it's great that the Cornell and the Technion are coming to Roosevelt Island. But trust me, the kids who graduate from there, they're gonna get jobs. Let's worry about the kids who are graduating from CUNY and turn CUNY into the pipeline for those high-tech jobs. And the good news is we've already started to do it. This year, the first tech apprenticeship program graduated from CUNY, a program I created. Now, it was just the first year, 18, but each one of them got a full-time job in the tech company they had interned in. That's a job with a good salary that's really gonna set you on a good path moving forward. That's what we all did, just working together with me as speaker. Think of what we can do with the mayor's office to turn all of the CUNYs into real pipelines for those terrific Google, Facebook, et cetera, jobs that now are all over the city, and seize that entrepreneurial spirit, not just for financial investments, but for jobs for New Yorkers.
On that vein, we'd love to get your vote. I'm on the board of Springboard.
Oh, sure,
Yeah,
great.
Springboard?
Yeah.
We're actually hosting an event
Oh, great.
in May in New York for all
Great.
the Springboard.
I'm a real estate advisor, and I agree with Toby. Actually, I deal with her partners, and I agree that J51 is an important issue when it comes up to real estate. And, people keep developing commercial buildings, which is zoned residential, and J51, without having that's being, blocked from being developed from commercial to residential.
Look, there's no question we need to get more housing out there. I mean, there just isn't enough that people can afford.
You know, Goldenberg, I guess I sit on enough boards.
Everything.
The three biggest issues that face us as a community: affordable housing. Our neighbors don't have vacant land or vacant buildings. And we are losing our children. They are moving away because of that. Yeshiva education. It's very nice to say there's a Blaine Amendment. There's a Blaine Amendment in 38 states, and yet I think 10 or 11 different cities have passed voucher programs. All the major candidates have said they're against vouchers, and I don't think in New York State it's very realistic to get vouchers. But giving us a little more in busing and giving us a little more in school books is not going to do it. We're struggling to make payrolls on a regular basis. There practically is not a yeshiva in New York City that is not struggling, that is not behind on payroll, and the pay that we pay is extremely low. Very few yeshivas are paying any sort of a decent salaries. So education, more than just giving us, bits and pieces. And the last part is security for our yeshivas, which is a major issue, because I think that we are, God forbid, but we're a major target. We're a very soft target. Our yeshivas do not have proper security. The yeshiva board that I sit on in New York cannot think about taking money out and putting up steel doors, putting up barricades. We're struggling to make our payroll. We're not going to take that money, and it's a difficult decision, but the reality is that we can't take that money out and say, let's put in proper security into yeshiva, which would probably cost, in our case, probably about $200,000. Security cameras, steel doors, steel barricades in front of the building, and we are really a very soft target.
The issue, you're right, I think everyone, I don't know about the Republican side, but on the Democratic side, maybe not Eric Salgado, has said that they're against vouchers, and that is my position as well. Security is an issue that we absolutely need to sit down with our mayor and work on and figure out how we can be helpful there. I think that is something that is perfectly appropriate for the city to be working with the yeshivas on. And you're right, some neighborhoods are more challenged on the issue of affordable housing than others because of space, land. There's two things we can look at there. I mean, one, where is there public buildings, public spaces that we could perhaps, build on top of? Use the lots of the libraries, say in Brooklyn and Queens, are one-story buildings. Are there air rights above those we could use creatively? Things of that nature we need to take a look at. We also need to look at where there is affordable housing in neighborhoods already built that's going to expire, and consider offering those buildings a property tax break, on those units that are affordable, to keep them affordable permanently. So that's a way to make sure we're adding in those areas, two ways we can add in those neighborhoods that don't have as much they don't have as much vacant property.
Not for any organization, not for anything whatsoever. Me and Ezra fight all the time.
Are you gonna fight now? Because I'm not in the mood.
I'm here as a resident of Brooklyn, middle-class person who is suffering. My taxes went up 3 times in the last 8 years. My health insurance tripled in the last 8 years. My gas bills and my water bills have tripled. And what's happening is we're barely making it. And my wife works, I work, we work very hard. And I'm talking for many
Sure.
people. I'm not talking for all my friends. I've asked many mayor candidates on this. How are we going to stop the bleeding? People are going to businesses, they have store owners, they're getting fines for things that are ridiculous. They're going to open restaurants, ABC ruins their business totally. They go into different areas and different neighborhoods trying to make a living, and they're working very hard. They established their business, they took loans out from banks, they're killing themselves to make it. And what's happening is, day by day, paycheck by paycheck, if my daughter's medication costs a little bit more, I don't have enough money to pay the rent. Tuition, which is a burden that we personally have. Besides all that, we don't have, in our salaries, both working, the middle class seems like it's shrinking. There's plenty of studies to discuss this. The UJA made a study just now. The African Society made a study about this. Our middle class is becoming poor. Our safety net is in the poor line, and I thank the city council and the speaker for helping tremendously on the council fundings to help the poor, which the speaker has done tremendous work with. But how are we, as a mayor, how are we going to keep our people from the middle class falling to the poor class?
Well, look, some of the stuff we talk about, more money in their pockets, that's critical, and I can talk a little bit more about that. But also reining in some of the costs and over-regulations is gonna help tremendously. You know, I'm not even gonna wait till I'm mayor. We announced a couple of weeks ago a total change in the restaurant grading system. It's gonna reduce fines by $10 million. Also, when I'm mayor, any first-time violation for small businesses that isn't some enormous public health issue, it's first time gonna get a warning, not a fine. Also, in some communities, it's a big issue that the small business owners don't speak English. We're gonna send out inspectors who speak the language of that small business person. I was working with a Spanish-speaking woman in Brooklyn. She got the same fine 3 times because she couldn't understand what the issue was when the inspector came. That's something we can fix. We also are gonna expand the new business acceleration team we have in the city. The new business acceleration team reduced the startup time for restaurants by 3 months. That's a big help to get you going. We need to do that for other industries to make it easier to open up. Now, you mentioned taxes. The biggest way the city of New York taxes folks is property taxes. And the property tax system, to put it kindly, I was talking about this last night out in Queens and Bay Terrace, is a mess. And that's a very kind description of it. One of my priorities for who the new finance commissioner is going to be is somebody who understands the property tax system and can implement the system we have fairly, which has not happened. And then we're going to have to go to Albany, and our state legislators are ready to work with us. I was talking to Edward Braunstein about this yesterday, the 7th member from Queens, to get real property tax reform passed. We're also going to have to change how we do our water rates. We're paying too much money in the lease on that. You're paying too much money in the lease on that.
Increased by 25%.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that is something there's no question. Also, we have to scale back, and all of this, any one of these things is not enough, but all of it together is going to start to add up to create more ease while we're also building affordable housing and facilitating the growth of jobs out there.
Jewish Community Council. Before I ask my question, I'm just going to mention that Speaker Quinn and I saw each other in a setting that probably nobody else did over here, and nobody should, and without cameras, without any press over there, she was very forthcoming. My son was in the hospital, and unfortunately her brother was there at the same time, and they kind of bonded a little bit. So that was when no one knew who she was, no nurses, and it was very touching moment. So let me get to my question. There are thousands of young men and women, more young men, because a lot of the women really, the way our education system, in the yeshiva, the girls' schools have probably better secular education, K through 12, but there's more.
Maybe the girls are just smarter.
Maybe they are. But generally they usually have K through 12. Even the Hasidic schools, K through 12, that to get enough of a background to get them able to workforce, those that want to enter the workforce. With young men, and it's especially more in the yeshiva and the Hasidic yeshiva system, it's difficult to change the system to work. But with the way the system is, for the cultural reason, the men that come out of the yeshiva system with a very good yeshiva education, and they may be great Torah scholars, but are ill-prepared really to come into the regular workforce. There's a tremendous need for a number of things, for proper counseling, job counseling, to actually counsel young men what it's like to enter the job market, and appropriate training. And many people have requisite skills there that have to be brought out.
Ways we could, in a number of different communities, use community-based groups better in job training. The challenge becomes, and this is just something you have to figure out the logistics of, is the kind of the companies looking for the jobs are connected right through the city agencies. So then if you have the community-based groups doing the training, which I think there's definitely a place for that, then we have to figure out how you connect the dot then to the businesses that are coming in through the city's entryway. And then also, how do you work with the community-based groups to make sure we're doing the check-ins and the tracking, and 6 months later and a year later. Now, I think this is overcomable, but we just have to put our thinking caps on and figure out how we do that.